Greetings, beloved Princeton United Methodist Church community. It's Pastor Jenny here, and I'm reading today from Luke chapter 4, verse 18. Now, this is Jesus speaking, but he is reading from Isaiah, and it says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor." This is the word of life. Thanks be to God. So we are in the midst of our Go Tell It on the Mountain Easter worship series, where we are trying to reclaim what evangelism looks like today and for us. And in light of this kind of knowledge that many of us have some tension with practices and language around evangelism. It can be hard for us to talk about, to kind of come to a good understanding of what it means for us to be sharing that good news with the world. Part of that, of course, is because some of us have had some really negative experiences with evangelistic practices, either on the giving end, the receiving end, the teaching end, all sorts of things. So we're taking some time to try to dig some of that up and air it out and come to some new or reclaimed understandings from our Methodist evangelical kinds of roots. And part of how we're doing this is we're talking about how the beginning and the end and everything in between around our evangelistic practice and understanding is about God's love. There's no fear in that love. There's no coercion in that love. It is about inviting people to hear and claim and experience, receive the gift of God's love, to come home to God's love, as we talked about it this past week. This week, we're talking about this good news. So the word evangelism means to share the good news, to be messengers of the good news. But this is one of those places where the church has, there are many like this, but the church has some words, some language that we use all the time, but we don't always take the time to be sure we know what we're talking about when we use this language. So we often talk about the good news, and but I would love for us to think a little bit, and this is the invitation for you in this moment. What is that good news? Now, we can think about this from several different ways. What does the Bible say the good news is? There's not just one answer there, although there is some movement towards a couple of answers there as you read. I invite you even to kind of look through some of those Gospels and the rest of the New Testament. Of course, this is a New Testament kind of thing, although the words good news, of course, this came from Isaiah, right? So that's not, it's not exclusively in the New Testament, but you might do a little Bible study work and see what the Bible talks about as good news. I also invite you to think about what you've heard the good news is. So maybe it's been explicitly taught to you in some place, some space, but how have you come to understand kind of from a teaching level, from a place where somebody's taught you or you've been introduced to this concept or this idea in beyond just hearing the words good news, right? What is the good news? How has it been taught to you? And a third way to think about this is also, how have you experienced the good news? So maybe nobody's ever been explicit with you about what the good news is, or you've never been taught, or you've never searched through the scriptures. But maybe you can bring some words or images to it just by your own experience of God's love, of God's presence, of the church community, your experience with your faith, your belief, and all of these things. How would you say this? How would you explain to somebody else what your experience of the good news is, or your learning about what the good news is? How would you go about talking with somebody about that? So I invite you just to explore. Again, well, there's not just one way to say this or one specific answer, although I think much like our saying that evangelism is all grounded in God's love. There is some baseline stuff that we can talk about together. So we'll dig into this more on Sunday. As we say, the good news is blank, fill in the blank. But I invite you to consider this ahead of Sunday, and what you hear, what you think, what stirs up in your own soul and spirit. Feel free, of course, to talk about this with other people. That is part of the beauty of it all. I also invite you, I have to step away from the camera for a second because I didn't pull it up right here, but I invite you to, you received this in your bulletin on Sunday, or it's in this email that you're here with this. These are some different opportunities, invitations for you. There are 9 different things here for you to engage in. The invitation is for you to do this by the time Pentecost comes around. Pentecost is May 19th this year. That's 50 days after Easter. That's how it gets its name, Pentecost, 50 days. And there's some invitations to you. Of course, these don't have a time limit. You can continue on. Part of my hope is that we can incorporate some of these practices, ideas, postures beyond that as well. But part of the invitation is for us to dig in, not only to thinking about evangelism in these days, but also practicing and exploring what it might be. I'll note too for you here one more time that this may not look like much of the evangelism work that you may have done or received or thought about before. My hope is that there's a whole lot more about listening here and conversing and being present with people than it is about coercion or about kind of convincing somebody of something. There is so much more to it than that. So I invite you into that. A couple of other things to invite you to. This Saturday, there's a concert, a benefit concert at the church. It'll be held in the Stanford Davis Room at 2:00. And Scott Collins and Julia Hanna and Paul Manulik and Julia's husband, Stephen, will be playing for us. All the proceeds, there's no cost to get in, but all the proceeds will be supporting the general fund at the church. So please come and enjoy some beautiful, wonderful music and some fellowship with others, and all for good things. And then on Sunday after worship, Amelia Tempo, one of our church members, is having a book launch party. I also, hold on one second. I wasn't prepared. This is her book. It's called Perseverance, and she's written her memoir, and she's going to have a celebration around this book, and you can come and hear more about it and hear more of her story too. Part of what I love is that she's sharing her story, and this is so much of what I hope all of us can do. It does not have to be in the form of a published book, of course. It doesn't have to be, but being able to share our stories is just so life-giving to all of us. It's courageous and vulnerable to do it, and it's so life-giving to us all. So come and hear more of her story and join in this fellowship time together. I will see you very soon. Know that you are enough because God is enough. We were created for joy, and it is a joy for me to be on this journey with you. I will see you soon.